Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Aquarium Online Academy. My name is Ty, and I work here at the Aquarium of the Pacific here in Long Beach, California, and I'm so glad that you're joining us this morning for our program. We do want to apologize for the late start. We had a couple of technical difficulties, but thank you for waiting with us, and we're going to still have a great time exploring some marine mammals today. Now, along our program, we do invite you to join us. This is our Ask a Scientist series. So we're going to put up a number on the screen, so if you would like to ask any questions or just share your observations, you can use this number here at 562-286-1838, or if you're watching afterwards, or if it's just easier, you can also use the email down below, which is live@lbaop.org. Now, even though this is Ask a Scientist, and I will be our scientist leading, all of you joining me are scientists as well, because all it means to be a scientist is to be curious about the world around you. We're going to make some observations. We're going to explore some different animals. We're going to chat with each other, chat with your friends that you're watching with, and then we're going to hopefully learn a whole lot about some marine mammals. Now, behind me, what you can see, this habitat here, this is called a kelp forest. And there are a couple of different marine mammals that call the kelp forest home. But before we dive into a couple of those, we want to go very, very quickly over what is a marine mammal, because if we're talking about these animals and you're looking around the rooms that you're watching in right now, if you look around you, I guarantee you, I promise you, that there is a mammal in the room right now, wherever you are. So look around, see if you can find a mammal, because even if there's no one around or no animals around, you can point at yourself, because you are a mammal. And so these animals that we're going to explore have some things in common with us. So let's go over quickly to my camera where I've written down a word of one type of marine mammal, which is a whale. Now, whales are marine mammals. They are the largest marine mammals and sometimes the largest animals in the world. But the reason we have this written down is because there's 5 things that all these animals, all these marine mammals, and us mammals on land, that we all share. Now, this will help us to remember them. The W means warm-blooded. Now, warm-blooded is sort of like a cool superpower, really, because what it means is that we can control our body temperature, our internal body temperature. So even if we go to an environment that is cold or hot, our body will stay around the same temperature, and that means we can go a lot of places, which is really awesome. That also means it's very useful for a lot of marine mammals who might live in cold environments, right? Because some of those parts of the oceans can be quite cold. Now the H is going to stand for hair, and so all these animals, including, right, us, give yourself a pat on the top of your head. You probably have some hair up there. We have hair all along the body. All these marine mammals are going to have that hair as well, at least at some point in their life. Now the A is going to stand for air. Now if you take a second and take a big, deep breath, you just took in a nice big breath of air. And so our marine mammals, even though they live in the ocean, they also are going to need to breathe air. And so we'll explore some of the ways that they do that. Now the L is live birth. Now hopefully, none of you should have hatched out of an egg, right? Because we give live birth, and all these mammals do as well, which is very different from something like a reptile, like a turtle, or like birds, right? All of those who lay eggs. Our mammals do not do that. There are some exceptions. But for the most part, live birth is going to be something that I'll share. And then, when your babies are born, one thing that they do is they need to get milk from their mom. So E is going to stand, this is going to sound kind of funny, it's going to stand for eat milk. You can think of eating or drinking milk. But those are 5 things that mammals share in common, both in land and in the ocean. And so now that we know some of those characteristics that tie us together, let's explore some of those adaptations or those special features on these different animals in the ocean that help them to survive. So let's go back to the kelp forest really quick. And like I said, there are quite a few marine mammals that call the kelp forest home. Now the kelp forest habitat is very close to our hearts here in Long Beach, California, because California has kelp forests all along its coast. Now kelp forests, all this stuff here is the kelp, or the seaweed, that grows really, really tall, and it becomes like an underwater rainforest. Now, there's one marine mammal in particular that is my personal favorite. I hope that you will love them as well, they are not only amazing and cute and awesome, but they are also super important to the kelp forest. And that is going to be a marine mammal called the sea otter. Now, this adorable animal right here is the sea otter. Now, go ahead and take just a quick few seconds and make some observations about this animal. Now, if you're watching along with somebody, you can share with them, or you can use that number down below, and you can share with us too. And I'll have my friend Sarah, who's working all the magic behind, pass on any questions that you might have. Now, as you just take a look at these sea otters, what are some things that stand out to you about them? Now, like I said, they have some of those things that all mammals are going to share, but then they also have some unique adaptations too. So can you spot any of those characteristics we talked about earlier? What about hair? Do you see any hair on the otter? Lots of it, right? Right? The sea otters have a very, very thick coat. Keep their fur. Just snack. Before. Because over on my camera, we have a little model skull. So it's not a real one. It gives us a good idea about their teeth. So over on my camera, I'll have a skull that we can check out. And we can also think about what they can use those teeth too, because they also will use tools like rocks, and they'll carry it around with them. They'll break open things with those hard shells, and then they can get into that delicious food that they want to eat. But, oh, okay. Well, we're going to hopefully fix those sound issues if we are having them. Apologize for that. In the meantime, we can take a look at those huge teeth that you can see on the sea otter. Now, those teeth help them, again, to break through a lot of those hard-shelled items that you see, or that we explored earlier. But this diet is very, very important because there's one animal that they love to munch on that makes them super important to the kelp forest. And that is a little critter called a sea urchin. Now, I have a little shell from a sea urchin here, a little skeleton, I'll say. And so when a sea urchin is alive, they're going to look very different. They're covered in spines all over their body. And so all these little bumps that you can see are where all those spines stick out when they're crawling around on the kelp forest. But if you think about an animal that has spikes all over its body, these tough spines, do you think that that's going to be something that is easy to eat, right? Here's a sea urchin here. Probably not. Right? If you were a fish swimming around in the ocean and you see something that looks like that, it's probably not going to be your first choice, right? Don't want to hurt your mouth. So those spines that they have help protect them. It's a great adaptation for the urchin. But the thing is, if not a lot of things can eat urchins, then each urchins can, their populations, their numbers can get really huge. There can be too many urchins. Now this one is snacking on some kelp. Now think back to the habitat that we were exploring, the kelp forest. So if urchins eat too much of that kelp, then you can see the habitat disappear. And then if you lose that habitat, then you lose the home for all the animals that call it home. And there are many, including those sea otters. Now, sea otters are one of the few animals that love to eat urchins. It's one of their favorite foods. And so when urchins are in a kelp forest, you have healthy kelp forests. When urchins are gone, sometimes the balance can get thrown out of whack, and you might lose a lot of those animals that call it home. Now, unfortunately, that thick fur we explored got otters into a little bit of trouble. They were hunted and their numbers declined. And when we lose otters, we lost that habitat. You can see this one munching on some clam. Now, when we lost that habitat and we lose that home for many animals, then, we might lose fish that we might be important for humans, or we just lose a lot of animals that call it home. And so one of the ways that we're trying to help bring back some of these sea otters from their low numbers is through an awesome program, which is called the Monterey Bay Sea Otter Surrogacy Program. So Monterey Bay is another aquarium in Central California, and what they do is they can rescue otters where they live in California if there's any orphaned pups, and they can pair them with an adult mom otter, because mammals, like us, we learn a lot of the things that we need to survive from our adults, our parents, our other humans, right? We learn a lot from each other. And baby otters need to learn a lot of their skills from their mom in most cases. And because of that, it's important that these little baby otters who might have lost their mom before, that they need those skills in order to go back out into their natural habitat. And so when they come into that program, they can get paired with a mom otter. That mom can teach it all of the things it needs, and then that baby hopefully can go back out into the ocean and survive and thrive out there in their kelp forest. And remember, when we help to bring back otters, we're not just bringing back them, we are helping to restore the whole kelp forest ecosystem by restoring that balance that has been thrown off. And so otters are an amazing marine mammal here that we are lucky enough to have along our California coastline. They are adorable, but also extremely important. Now, while we have a few minutes, we're going to see if we can look at another marine mammal that calls the kelp forest home. And there's some that we actually have here at the aquarium too, just like our sea otters. So I'm going to have my friend pull up some pictures of a seal or a sea lion. All right, so if you take a look here, these are some California sea lions. Now, take a second to make some observations now about the sea lions. Is there anything that looks different compared to the otters? Anything that looks the same? Right? Because as mammals, they're going to share some of the same things that the otters have, but there's also some differences between them too. Now, these are some of the sea lions that call our aquarium home, but sea lions are also all up and down our California coast, and they too will live in that kelp forest ecosystem, looking for lots of different types of fish and squid to eat. Now, if I'm looking at these sea lions, they do look a little bit different than the sea otters. It might be hard to tell in this picture, but sea lions get much, much bigger. And if you look at them, they look kind of sleek, right? The sea otters looked really, really fluffy, but it's kind of a trick. These sea lions also have fur all along their body. But since it doesn't look the same as the sea otters, when they're going and swimming through the ocean all day, swimming in the water, it gives them this sort of shiny, sleek appearance. But they do have that fur too to help them stay warm. But they also have another trick to stay warm too, and that also kind of relates to that bigger size. Because sea otters rely completely on that fur, but lots of other marine mammals that are larger, like sea lions, seals, and even whales, they use something called blubber, which is a layer of fat to help keep some of that warmth in. This is an adorable picture right here. And so in the chilly kelp forest, that can help them to stay warm too. Now, is there anything else that you notice that is maybe shared between those sea otters and our sea lions that we saw in some of these pictures? Now, if I look close over here on their adorable face too, you can see that they have some whiskers. Now, whiskers are found on a lot of different animals, a lot of different mammals, even ones that might be, oh, this is an amazing picture. So you can see those whiskers are shared too. But maybe if you have like a dog or cat at home, they also have whiskers. Now, for our marine mammals, our sea lions and our otters, those whiskers are very useful for looking for food out in the ocean. It helps them to sense their environment and pick up little vibrations of these different animals that move around them. Now, the kelp forest can be kind of dark too, and so having these extra senses to find their food can be very, very helpful. Now, sea lions like to eat lots of different types of fish. They need to be pretty quick to catch some different types of fish, and they have another adaptation called their flippers. Now, let's see if we can maybe look at a picture of some of the strong flippers of a sea lion. Now, if you've ever seen them before, if you've been around an area where they might live, You may have even heard a sea lion too. They have a very loud bark that they do that gives them that name. But they also have really, really strong flippers. For sea lions, it's going to be those front flippers. Now, the front flippers help them when they're up on land too. You're seeing in these pictures, some of the sea lions are kind of hanging out on the beach, and those big flippers help to keep them up. But when they go diving in the water, those big, strong flippers help them to move through the water. This is a great picture. You can see in action those huge flippers right there that they can use. And their back ones are sort of like their steering wheel. That's how they can move around quickly when they're out in the waters. Now, this is a great shot because you can see they're in midair right now. They're not swimming down in the water. Now, this is a behavior that they do in order to pick up even more speed. It's called porpoising, because it's a lot easier to move through the air than in the water. Because if you're thinking about us, right, it's pretty easy for us to walk around through the air. But if you've ever gone swimming, it takes a lot more energy to move through the water. And so if these sea lions feel like they need to go somewhere fast, they can start jumping up from the top of the water and get somewhere quickly, because it's much easier to move through the air. Now, that name of porpoising comes from another marine mammal, and it's seen in some other marine mammals too. Maybe if you've ever seen videos of or pictures of dolphins jumping through the water, maybe we could take a look. They do the same thing, jumping in and out of the water so they can swim really, really fast. And they also have some of those same adaptations, right? Those same sort of flippers. Now, they may not do the same thing because the sea lions are going to be flexible, moving through the water. For the dolphins, they're going to use their sort of back flipper here, this section of their body, to move very quickly. So even though their movement is a little bit different, you can sort of see some of those shared body features between them, and in this case, some shared behaviors that they do too, right? So there's a lot of useful adaptations that these marine mammals have to help them survive. Now, another one that you might see that we can explore quickly about these dolphins is the way that they use sound. Because we talked about how sea lions and sea otters might use like their whiskers to help find food. Now, dolphins, they don't really look like they have any hair, right? But they must at some point if they are a marine mammal like we talked about, because that's one of the things that makes a mammal a mammal. Now, what's interesting is that for whales and dolphins, when they're little babies, they do have some hair, almost like a little mustache. And they can use that to say, hey, Mom, I'm hungry. I need some milk when they're little babies. But as they grow up, they will lose that hair in most cases and have this sort of sleek appearance that you see here. Now, despite losing their hair and not using the whiskers in the same way that those animals do, they have a very special trick because they're going to use sound. Now, they're going to use sound in a form called echolocation, kind of like bats do, if you've ever heard of bats using sound to explore dark caves. So what they can do is they can send out sound waves, and as they bounce off things and come back, the dolphins can get a great idea of where their food is, how big it is, how far away it is, and it helps them to be really, really great predators out in the ocean. So now we've explored pretty quickly a couple different types of marine mammals today. Now we talked about our otters and how they have that really dense fur, how they're super important to the kelp forest ecosystem. And we talked a little bit about a program that helps orphan sea otters to learn some skills to go back out in the ocean. And then we briefly talked about our sea lions, who share some of those same features, like those whiskers to find their food, but have some extra ways of staying warm, like that blubber. And then thanks to that beautiful action shot, we got to see some porpoising that is also shared between dolphin species in order to get some high speed when they're out there in the ocean. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today. If you do have any last-minute questions as you're taking and absorbing all the things we talked about today, remember you can text us at the number or use the email down below. And even if it's after we're done, we'll be sure to get back to you and make sure we answer all of your questions. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.